Let's continue the conversation as we bring in the Chief Executive Officer of Mobus Property and Jonah Capital Houses for Africa, Kojo Ansa Mensah. It's good to have you on the program this morning.
Thank you for having me here.
Thank you for joining us. Now let's begin. There is a lot of buzz around the new U.S. tariff policy, what some people are now calling the Trump tariff or the 3 Ts. Even President Tinubu has asked his economic team to look into the possible impact of this on the Nigerian economy. From your perspective as an international businessman, what step do you think that African countries should take to cushion the effect of this new policy?
First of all, I think the steps taken by His Excellency the President on setting up his economic team to look into the impact of the tariffs imposed by America is the right step. Whilst we can sit down and maybe wail about the impacts this is having on our lives, we have to look at it from holistically as far as the U.S. economy is concerned. During the lead up to the U.S. election, the 2 leading candidates campaigned on several policies, and the people of the United States of America chose to elect President Trump. What President Trump is implementing is the exact policies that he communicated to the U.S. Population, which led to him winning all the swing states in the elections. The impact of Americans losing jobs, losing automobile jobs in Detroit, farmers going out of work in Iowa and all the across the states is what has informed that policy. Now, what that should tell us is that in Africa here too, we have to look inwardly and look at what our problems are from agriculture, from education, from housing, and develop homegrown solutions that are originated in Africa and meant to solve African problems. You see, we cannot expect the likes of McKinsey, World Bank, IMF to diagnose our problems for us in the areas of the critical areas where we want to empower our youth. Those are solutions that should be diagnosed here on the continent and implemented by our leaders holistically and specifically to meet our needs. So with African free trade, continental free trade being enacted and the president of Nigeria putting in place a policy, of course, Nigeria with the population and its land mass should be in a position to lead the conversation, because when Nigeria sneezes, the rest of Africa catches a cold. So that therefore means that the solutions will have to come from Africa, Nigeria. Nigeria must lead the way. Nigeria must formulate policies that will not just impact Nigeria, but impact the sub-region and, in fact, Africa as a whole. Okay. So, whilst this might be a problem, it also presents an opportunity for us to sit down as Africans, as African economies, as African leaders, to say that, look, are we doing enough to strengthen our economies? Are we truly independent as far as our economic directives and our economic policies are concerned? Are we rushing to the West for pittance, or are we rushing to the West to engage them on economic reforms?
Okay. Now, I like that aspect of Africa will have to sit back and look at what is best for them, talking about nationalism and cooperation amongst African countries. But you've been in Nigeria for over a decade now.
Absolutely.
And what are those pull factors that made you to stay even outside your home country? You're a Ghanaian,
yes,
and you've been invested in Nigeria. What are the positives you have seen?
See, that is the impact of when deliberate policies are being put in place to show up investment on the continent. My coming to Nigeria was based on the setting up of the Honorary Investment Advisory Council by President Obasanjo during his era. That is where my principal, Sir Sam Jonah, who is the founder of Jonah Capital Houses for Africa and Mobus, came in and as advisor to the president, along with prominent African and Nigerian business leaders, looked at avenues where we can impact the Nigerian economy. And my principal put his money where his mouth is and decided to invest in real estate in Nigeria. Over the period of 10 to 12 years, our impact has spared at least about over $250 million to the Nigerian economy. That is what I'm talking about, homegrown solutions. When African leaders, both political and business leaders, are brought together to diagnose our problems and come up with solutions, that we are the ones sitting by the fire and we feel the heat. So we can't go to the West all the time. That is why that initiative by President Obasanjo should be an example of such policies that we should do. We should open up Africa. We should open up West Africa because we have the numbers. We are the youngest and fastest growing economy, but yet we are not building our future. We are destroying our future. We are opening up our future indiscriminately for the East and the West to come and take advantage of us. If you go to my home country, Ghana, there's the surge of illegal mining, Galamsey, where our water bodies are being destroyed for the gain of gold to be exported to the East. What is the future that beckons for us? But when our leaders sit down and engage as a region, we will be able to come up with those solutions that will benefit us today and the future.
Well, still talking impact, how would you describe the contribution of Jonah Capital and Mobus Property to Nigeria's economy over the years? In what ways has your presence made a difference in the real estate or investment space? And again, could you share with us some of your standout projects or milestones you can be proud of?
Absolutely. Firstly, talking about impact. I mentioned the contribution to the GDP, both direct and indirect creation of jobs, in the economy. However, it's also the signaling that matters. The fact that we can do business freely in the sub-region is critical because that is the sign that we will send to the world that we are united. We have the legal and regulatory systems to protect investors. There are several businesses in Nigeria, owned by Nigerians in Ghana, but there are very few Ghanaian businesses in Nigeria. And I think that cuts across. But if we are going to open up our economies, we need to get behind the fact. Nigeria must export jobs, must export resources, but Nigeria must also import businesses, must import jobs for the citizens of Nigerians. And so that impact, of course, we have built River Park Estate, which is one of the largest estates in Abuja. We've done other private developments in other prime areas in Abuja. But those do not solve the problems that you started off with, the critical housing problem that we have. Those are the problems that will be solved when the political leaders and the business leaders sit down together to see how we can make housing affordable and accessible to the general populace. And that is where, of course, people with experience like myself and other leaders who have, traveled the road and have access to certain financial resources, technologies, can come in, partner with the government, and see how we can build those solutions that we talk about. High-end properties are not the solution to the housing crisis that we have now, and it's going to keep getting worse. If you look at the growth of the population is going to continue growing. There's going to be a pressing need for housing. And housing is a basic human right. And also, home ownership is an emotive entitlement that we as people have. So it is something that must be guarded and protected, and deliberate policies put in place to grow.
Now, talking about the deliberate policies, we know there is this aspect of elitist housing that is not best for Africa, considering the economic strata in Africa. Now, what are those things that should be done about mortgage that can bring in this crop of underemployed Africans, low-income Africans, so that they can also own their own houses? Because once we can solve the housing challenge in Africa, we solve a lot of things.
So your question suggests that the housing crisis is just a symptom of the general economic malaise that we have been going through. So the solution is not just going to be one pronged. It's going to be several pronged. You know, we need to empower our youth. Our youth must be given the skills that will equip them for the future. Nigeria has the numbers. I mean, when I talk about deliberate policies that we need to look at, I mean, I'm sure we are all familiar with the movie Catch Me If You Can, how a criminal in bank forgery was co-opted into CIA to help build robust security protocols in the financial system. What are we doing with the brains and the skills that our teeming youth have, the innate skills that we have? If you don't financially equip our youth, no matter the price of a property, they cannot afford it. So we must look at it holistically, as far as strengthening the economy, but also with areas of mortgages. Of course, government must put in place, and in fact, Nigeria must be commended, because Nigeria is one of the few West African countries that has a solid mortgage scheme for government employees. More can be done, but the start and the platform has been created. So there's an opportunity for that to be grown, more people to be brought into the formal economy so that they can be able to access some of these fundings that will be able to give them access to those properties that we're
very quickly because our time is running out. What's next for Mobus Property? Any plans for expansion? I would just like you to answer that in 30 seconds.
Yes, definitely. I mean, we seek to continue to develop properties in partnership with other local investors in Nigeria, create more jobs, and we're going to continue to fly the flag of Nigeria and be ambassadors of the great Federal Republic of Nigeria to augment and add our voice to what His Excellency the President has already started to bring in foreign investment into Nigeria. So we are the ambassadors, and hopefully we can sing the praises of Nigeria.
Well, we'll definitely look forward to that. Thank you so much for your time with us on the program. Kojo Ansah Mensah. It was a nice one talking to you this morning. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.